Foreign Policy magazine. At that time, knowing of the ties of Trump and the team around him to the Russians, his solicitation of Russian aid, his embrace of Russian positions, his propensity for corruption, his repeated lies and deceptions about his links to Russia, and his deeply flawed character, my colleagues and I made a decision unprecedented in the almost half-century-long history of the magazine. We wrote an editorial urging against the election of Trump and asserting that the risk his elevation to the presidency would pose would be grave. We were not alone. The warning signs were there. More than that, he had not only made public his embrace of Russian assistance with his objective of defeating Hillary Rodham Clinton, but we knew that the Russians were using active measures to attack the United States. In fact, we at Foreign Policy had been among those attacked by Fancy Bear, the Russian hackers later demonstrated by Robert Mueller's team to be part of a Russian military intelligence team effort to hack not only the Democratic National Committee, DNC, but a number of sites that they felt might be influential in the United States, including, in addition to Foreign Policy, the Council on Foreign Relations, and others. It was known that Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign chairman, had shady ties to Russian oligarchs, including some very close to Vladimir Putin, and we had seen Manafort and Trump's team had altered the GOP platform to take a more Russia-friendly stance on Ukraine. Despite Russia's serial violations of international laws and norms in its attacks on that country and its seizure of Crimea. In other words, these were not just political dirty tricks that Trump was engaged in. This was collaboration with one of America's most determined adversaries, the one country in the world that had more nuclear weapons than the United States. Of course, since Trump took office, the scope and scale of his cooperation with the Russians and their consequences came into clearer focus. And campaign crimes were compounded by crimes committed to obstruct justice, to protect not just Trump and his team, but the Russians too. In fact, throughout Trump's first term of office, he has repeatedly undertaken actions that protect Russia and Russians, advance their interests, and thwarted the efforts of the U.S. intelligence, law enforcement, diplomatic, and military communities as they sought to stop or counteract Russian wrongdoing. He has also sought the involvement of other governments in helping to serve his personal objectives, from Ukraine to China, placing personal interests above national interests, another form of grave betrayal. And, as of this narration, despite the multiple investigations into the president's activities and the serial revelations of his misdeeds and a formal congressional impeachment investigation, Donald Trump shows no signs of reversing or even moderating these efforts. Indeed, as the Ukraine and China instances reveal, he entered into his campaign for re-election as he did his first campaign, soliciting aid from foreign powers to help him win power at home and offering to them the benefits of his holding that office. This approach echoes the Trump first ideology at the core of all he does. See, for example, how he denied or delayed federal assistance during the coronavirus outbreak to states whose governors he saw as being critical or even not fully appreciative of his efforts. That, too, was a betrayal of his duty to his country. Even after the Mueller investigation into his 2016 ties with the Russians and the Trump impeachment hearings, which centered around his abuse of power in shaking down the Ukrainian government in order to advance his personal political interests, much remains to be revealed by the investigations into the president's involvement in and support of attacks against the United States. Investigations that might not even be fully